Okay. Okay. Everybody's got to behave. You're being recorded. Okay. So, I just want to mention that we are in our fourth year, coming up to the end of the fourth year, and that's almost every first Sunday of the month, except for one or two things. And so I just want to mention that we're going to have a break for summer. For oh, there's another young one. Hi there, Eddie.
Yes, Eddie, you finally joined.
Hello.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm a bit late.
No, it's all right. It's all right. No problem.
This is a
Very,
special
very,
day.
very pleased to have you with us, Eddie. So now you've got mates there. Okay. So we're gonna have a break for 2 months in summer, so I can wind down, and then we'll get back again. Okay. So today we are discussing a very simple topic, as they always are: discovery versus invention. What I'm basically asking is anything truly new, or is everything a discovery of something that was already there? If the latter, there's no such thing as an invention. Basically, what we will be doing, what we'll be looking at, is a symbiotic relationship between innovation and knowledge. At the bottom of what we will be discussing is the question, is there a first time? Hi there, Trevor. Is there a first time? I'll give you very, very short definitions as we all know them. Discovery is finding something that already exists but was previously unknown. Examples include natural phenomena, scientific principles, or geographic locations. Invention is creating something new that did not exist before. This can be a device, a process, or a new way of doing something. I certainly don't agree with the invention part, but that's what's generally accepted. The question is a deep one. It's about the primacy of ontology or epistemology. So I need to ask, do things that were discovered exist before they were discovered? This seemingly controversial question often leads to the knee-jerk reaction of, yes, of course they do. To claim that they didn't previously exist seems, on the surface, to be patently ridiculous. A common view is that discoveries are about uncovering what was already there rather than creating something new. For example, the laws of physics are said to have existed before humans discovered and formulated them. For invention, we can look at the Wright brothers and the invention of the airplane. The philosophical perspective, for example, is the Platonic view, suggesting that all knowledge exists in an abstract realm, and what we do is to uncover or discover these eternal truths. Well, those of you who've been with me for a while know what I think of eternal truths. According to Plato, these forms exist independently of human perception and discovery, suggesting that they existed before they were discovered. Okay, well, we'll think about that after a while. Scientific examples of discovery in science, for example, the laws of gravity were discovered by Newton. They existed before he formulated them. Or there's invention in science, the creation of the internet by researchers at DARPA. It did not exist before human ingenuity brought it into being. Is development invention? After all, it's a development of something. But let's look again at the question of, do things that were discovered exist before they were discovered? What is usually claimed is that once we discover something, it merely proves that it existed beforehand. I must then ask, in which way does something exist when we have no knowledge of it? In which way and where and for whom did the laws of physics exist before anyone knew about them? And what about the laws of physics that are changed when found to have been wrong? Does it make sense to have discoveries of things that are found not to have existed? It surely is an assumption that what we discover proves that it existed before we discovered it. For instance, when a new species is discovered, It is assumed that the species had existed in the physical world, but that its existence in human knowledge and understanding came through discovery. I maintain, though, that it didn't exist in the physical world if no one knew about it. The question is about whether the species existed regardless of human awareness of it. Surely, though, the reason the new species was new was that it was discovered. It was new because it was discovered. So, if it hadn't been discovered, it would not have existed. Similarly, distant galaxies, ancient fossils, and mathematical principles were new to those who discovered them. Whether they existed before they were discovered, i.e. known about, is unanswerable. We assume that they did exist, but our assumption is based on what we know from when they were known about. The scientific observation backing up Edwin Hubble's astonishing discovery that the universe is expanding surely doesn't mean that it was expanding before we knew about it. What would that mean? It's not that our perception shapes our reality. My point is that our perception is our reality, and our reality can only be based on what we had come across previously. When explorers discovered new lands, Columbus discovering the Americas, for example, those lands were already inhabited by indigenous peoples. But until those lands were known about by the explorers, they did not exist for them, which is why they were new lands, even though they obviously existed for those who lived there. So personally, what about an island you didn't know about until you read about it? Did the island exist for you till then? The answer would have to be that it didn't. The fact that it existed for other people does not abrogate the fact that you had no knowledge of it and thus did not exist for you. If you insist that the island existed when you didn't know of its existence at the time, you are infected with a case of retrospective foreknowledge, claiming to have known something before knowing it. Existence requires awareness. Even when unearthing ancient ruins, fossils, or artifacts, which presumably reveal aspects of our past, it is here that awareness comes into play in a double sense. After all, only when these objects are unearthed are they aspects of our past revealed. This could then justify and prove previous theories of past happenings, or they could cause a review and change what had previously been known about the periods in question. What these objects don't do, though, is to prove the past, but rather aspects of the past or a possible past. There is no real objective past, but only a remembered past, sometimes an invented past. Unearthed ruins, etc., are surely discoveries which reveal the edge of the present, not past knowledge. This brings us naturally to dinosaurs, obviously. If so far we have been considering discoveries that were supposedly in existence before they were discovered, where do dinosaurs come into the picture? Unlike unearthed ruins from human history and prehistory, dinosaurs were around nearly 65 million years before humans appeared. The notion that dinosaurs existed before they were discovered needs to be thought about differently. First of all, we need to ask whether dinosaurs existed even in imagination before February the 20th, 1824, which is when the very Reverend William Buckland became the first person to discover a dinosaur. It was a day that dinosaurs were discovered and the day that history was changed, since before then the huge bones that had been found were attributed to large versions of known animals. Dinosaurs, though, were different, having existed before humans did. The discovery of dinosaurs was now based on conjectured evidence in a new science, eventually named paleontology, on animals that have become extinct and therefore not based on our past or on a remembered past. That being said, the line between discovery and invention is somewhat blurred, with memory now reliant on experts' memory or what other expert had established or what had never been part of human history. So, were dinosaurs discovered or invented or reinvented? If dinosaurs are the link between our past and our pre-past, we must wonder whether the traditional distinction between discovery and invention is valid at all. It's not at all clear-cut that discovery is one of the objective and the universal, while invention is subjective and human-centric. After all, nothing is invented from nothing. Every invention, every discovery is based upon knowledge linked to previous knowledge. Experience is knowledge dependent. Existence is knowledge dependent rather than miraculously in place waiting to be discovered or invented. Questions don't come from nowhere. Questions, as thoughts with a question mark, they arise from perceptions that add to memory and resurface changed. The metamorphosis of thought to doubt comes about through the addition of a question mark. By adding a question mark, thoughts here begat other thoughts. It is thoughts all the way down, not turtles all the way down, by the way. Knowledge is, believe it or not, limited. We know only what we know. To put it rather scandalously, because knowledge is temporary and transient, we know all there is to know. Existence is a slave of knowledge, an integral part of the observer, where knowledge is a sibling of the observer and the mother of discovery. If that is so, it's a legitimate claim that everything comes from something, and that, as it says in the Bible, there is nothing new under the sun. With everything based on previous knowledge, the phrase standing on the shoulders of giants is an apt metaphor for making progress using the understanding gained by earlier thinkers rather than emerging entirely from scratch. Nothing comes from nothing, in other words. If we take, for example, Einstein's groundbreaking theories of relativity, both as special and general theories, they were deeply influenced by scientific advancements that preceded them. Among them were Newton's laws of motion and universal gravitation, Maxwell's electromagnetic theory, which demonstrated the wave-like nature of light, the Michelson-Morley experiment, which by showing the non-existence of ether challenged the conventional understanding of space and time, the Lorentz transformation, which provided a mathematical framework which Einstein used to form his theory of special relativity. Now, just as important are the philosophical and conceptual influences that were basic to Einstein's thinking and his way of changing previously accepted concepts and ideas. Influenced by thinkers such as Ernst Mach and Hermann Minkowski, whose notion of relative motion and the geometric interpretation of space-time contribute to Einstein's revolutionary insight. His avid interest and exclusive reading of philosophers such as Kant, Schopenhauer, Spinoza, and Hume point to the strong underlying influence of philosophy in his scientific breakthroughs. If there was a watermark that ran through what Einstein picked up from the philosophers he read, it was the essentiality of the human being the center of experience. While this is not always overtly apparent in their writings and comments, it rang a bell for Einstein and based his views on the world. Can anything be new? Is nothing we build new? I say no. By the way, there is no problem from the religious point of view. They don't have that problem at all. God created out of nothing. Without that, creation would not be a big deal, let's face it. But one can only understand that from God's point of view, not from the human point of view. So when God created the universe, there was ostensibly nothing beforehand. But we cannot envisage that since we are around to do so. So we are something in the picture. So, how are we doing with time? So there are many things still waiting to be discovered. If there are things that are never discovered, in which way can we say that they exist? How about numbers? Did numbers exist at the time of the dinosaurs? In fact, as I already asked, did dinosaurs exist at all? The point made here is not subjective realism that makes nature's existence depend on the existence of individual minds. It's not that animals came to existence only after the advent of minded animals, humans. But they were known to exist when there were humans who could know. To say that something existed before there was an observer is ridiculous. That claim can be made only retrospectively. So what is new? Waves create other waves. No wave is exactly the same as another wave. Is there a first wave? When is movement of water a wave? Is there such a point? This is similar, as you must probably know, to the Sorites effect. The question of when a number of grains of sand become a pile has been exploited in philosophy, particularly through this Sorites paradox. The paradox highlights the difficulty in defining vague concepts like piles and heap based on gradual changes. For this discussion, the question is, when does a pile start? When does a wave start? When does anything start? And like the waves that separate and reform, our thoughts inevitably clash within us and form the progression of what we are. Thoughts are in constant conflict and inner turmoil, a stream of consciousness that carries us forward within a grand wave of dissonance. Now let me ask, can we think of something that we can't describe or envisage? So can we know something we don't know? If we did, it would mean that we could invent something that is beyond our knowledge. But this is nonsense for a start. It would leave the possibility that everything exists, or at least the possibility that everything exists. And the fact that we can't think of all those things doesn't abrogate the fact that there are or will be at least some of those things. This is an urge to get down to the things in themselves, because there must be things that are the basis of what we know, perceive, or conceive of. Kant didn't succeed, in my opinion, because he imposed concepts that humans brought in. He was wrong that there are things in themselves, we can never get to them, but he wasn't wrong that humans had to be the source of descriptions. I have to mention Hegel because some people love him and I like to annoy them. I don't know if anybody's here today, I can't see anybody. But anyway, Hegel as well always used a lot of words and ideas that sound good to Hegel fans, but well, he said, discovery relates to the process of uncovering what is already part of the rational structure of reality, aligning with the objective unfolding of truth and knowledge. He talked about invention, but pertains to the creative arts of the human spirit, resulting in new syntheses and transformation of existing materials and ideas into novel forms. I don't see where the invention is different from discovery, by the way, in what he said. Art is Olga here? No. Oh, okay. Art is never new, never. However weird it is to us, it is based on something that exists or existed. There was a movement in the 60s and 70s that tried to get to the basis, the beginning of art. For example, the black squares of Ad Reinhardt and others, and so build from there. John Cage tried something similar for music. In his composition, 4 minutes 33, composed in 1952, that consisted of 4 minutes and 33 seconds of silence. If music came from nothing, that was not the case here, since it had a background of non-science. Starting again is not starting from nothing. As with art, so with literature. For example, stream of consciousness, a literary technique that captures the flow of human thought, often with little regard for traditional grammar or punctuation. It sort of presents the inner workings of the character's mind. So Joyce's Ulysses, Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway, and William Faulkner's The Sound and the Fury. Invention? Of course not. How do we reconcile something that we consider to be true, consider to be new, and we all do, with that which we consider to be an invention? How do we all know there are new things? Despite what I'm telling you, I don't think there are. But we can't. It's purely a matter of language when we make an artificial point that we call new. New is a perception that has nothing to do with reality. All knowledge is a part of a continuum. Newness is not like a movie that can be stopped to examine a particular scene. But now, okay, not bad. Another few minutes, I come to a very scandalous point. Terry, you'll be very upset. Not yet. You will be, maybe. Anyway, despite all I've been saying, I am wondering. Interesting is the hype around AI and its connection to the forward leap to our knowledge. In breathless news in the UK Guardian about Google DeepMind, we're informed that there was a breakthrough in the world's first scientific discovery that can generate information that goes beyond human knowledge. Now, according to what I've just been saying up to now, it could not be beyond human knowledge since it has become part of human knowledge. Yet, I need to rethink that when it refers to AI. And that has messed up everything I said before now. AI has really done it to me. So the question is whether anything is beyond human knowledge. This, I've said, can be seen only in retrospectively. But because AI is never not connected to what came before, it's possible to claim that AI is not an invention. It is a continuation and extension of our knowledge. But part of AI is the speed with which it can solve problems. So much so that we can consider it a time machine. It does things faster than humans can. Instead of humans working for 10 years on solving something, AI can do it in, say, an hour. Instead of 50 years, a month, or a week, or a day. None of the information is new. It's just faster. Now, according to Tim Gowers, a professor of mathematics at Cambridge University, I quote, in the last 2 or 3 years, there have been some exciting examples of human mathematicians collaborating with AI to obtain advances on unsolved problems. He said that, and I quote again, this work potentially enables mathematicians to seek efficiently for clever and unexpected constructions. Better still, these constructions are humanly interpretable. So instead of generating a solution, AI generates a program that finds the solution, a solution to a specific problem that might give us no insight into how to solve other related problems. But a program that finds the solution, that's something a human being can read and interpret and hopefully thereby generate ideas for the next solution and the next. But will they be able to understand each other? This is my point. This is one example of time travel. Killing 2 points I've been making for years, and it's really got me upset. That existence is knowledge and that time travel is notionally possible. What I mean to say is that they find things so fast that we actually don't understand what they've discovered because we haven't been there yet. That for me is a huge problem. It means that not only have we got timetable, which I never believed possible, I now believe it is. I don't know if any of you've seen an interesting YouTube came out recently about two AIs talking to each other. They set up their own protocol and they discuss things that nobody understood. No human understood what they were saying, but they did. And that, as far as I'm concerned, is a danger. And at that point, I don't want to go into the discussion of AI. First of all, I don't know as much as other people here. Secondly, I only want to talk about AI as a possible continuation of something else or not. If it isn't, then we have to rethink the whole thing. I shall stop now. Haven't done bad with time. So I leave for you to attack me or whatever you want to do with what I just said. So thank you. And first in, David, you were in very quick. David.
Yeah. Yes. Can you hear me? All
Yes,
right.
yes, perfectly well.
Point of clarification. You said 10, 12 minutes ago, do I believe nothing is new? No. Is that a double negative? Or let's get your position.
Okay. I
Do
do
I
not
believe nothing is new?
I do not believe that anything is new.
So uh, let's uh, let's get that straight with one restatement, please.
Okay. Well,
Is anything new? No. Is that
correct.
what you're?
Yeah, that's what I said. Yes.
Very good. Thank you.
That's it? Oh,
Oh,
okay.
there's more. There's
Okay,
more.
fine. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Richard.
Okay. Um, I'm still not sure about this. I've listened to you, and I find the whole thing rather like the discussion of the sound of a tree falling when nobody hears it. And
It's exactly that. It's exactly that discussion.
knowing
Yes.
what you feel about Buddhism and Zen philosophy, I do find it surprising you've gone into it. But I've long argued when people annoyed me by talking about romantic love as if it was sort of an actual fact, that in Aristotle's time it didn't exist. When Aristotle put forward his idea of love, there was eros, or erotic love, there was love of a family, there was love of a state, but there was no romantic love. That came along when Eleanor of Aquitaine and all the women who were sick of being locked up because their husbands had gone off to the Crusades got poets to write them songs and poetry, and the poets invented romantic love. Now, when you take this, I can see, I mean, my argument, I think, is perfectly reasonable if you take one point of view. And on the other hand, I just read, for instance, a couple of days ago, that they found that the herpes virus was passed between Neanderthal humans and Cro-Magnon humans because they were kissing, not killing each other. Admittedly, we probably killed off Neanderthals because of the diseases we carried, like the herpes virus. But if they were kissing, isn't a kiss something that shows romantic love existed even between two subspecies of humans who couldn't even properly communicate with each other? And so therefore romantic love must have always existed. So I go back to your point of view, there is nothing new. And now I know you don't like my view that things don't exist until language can be maths as well as linguistics, but until there is a language, a human language that describes them, or possibly, as you've just raised it, in the case of AI, machines have invented something, but there has to be a means of communication. However, it is obvious that there are some physical things that exist. I mean, the dark side of the moon existed before anybody realized there was a dark side of the moon. The further stars existed when people thought they were just the gods shining them. On the other hand, I take your view, to the human consciousness, they didn't exist. So therefore, is there an objective reality and a subjective reality? All I think you've raised so far are more questions rather than any answers. At least that's for me.
That's my basic aim in life.
Yes, of course. And so was it for Socrates. But I mean, and mine when I was teaching too. But at the same time, I mean, if we're going to discuss this, one has to take a point. And I, at the moment, have no actual hard and fast rule. I do still feel that we have to describe something for us on a subjective level, but on an objective level, obviously there exists things that we haven't described yet. So it comes down to description. And I know I'm going back to one of your least favorite people. I'm going back to Russell and his arguments about language again.
I've been waiting for that.
I didn't intend to. I didn't start.
No, I know you didn't. I don't intend many things either, but they come out.
Yeah.
I just thank you very much. I understand. I understand the difficulty. I don't think I don't have, but I came to a conclusion quite a while ago, changed my position regarding ontology, and decided that it's epistemology that counts. I cannot understand. I really cannot understand how one can propose that something exists that one doesn't know about. How come? What does that even mean? I mean, it everything means that everything exists. But everything, because we haven't got to it yet. That doesn't make sense.
Without humans.
Pardon?
If humans didn't exist, would the universe still exist?
Of course not. Who for? Well, what does that? What does that mean?
Dinosaurs, as you see, like them, elephants, Neanderthals, ants.
How do you know? You only know because people have discovered things and told you about it. But there's nobody to discover anything.
So you're saying it's intelligence that defines what exists?
No, I never mentioned the word
intelligence. I can define it.
No, the observer.
Yeah.
The observer. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense to me. How can something exist without anybody knowing about it? It just doesn't make sense to me. But I see your point. I'm pleased that you're sort of confused. I like that.
We all are.
I know we all are. Okay. Thank you, Richard.
You're not confused.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you. Kerry, hi there.
Hello. Okay. So I wanted to say something first to Richard. I think a good question is worth more than a bad answer. So it's always good to try to define the good questions. So thanks, Ron. I'm enjoying things so far. I hope everybody else is too. I think you bringing up the Platonic forms, great right off the bat. But I think a lot of this discussion is going to hinge a lot on language and how we draw boundaries. Things like, what is potential? What is implication? Right? I mean, we can say that life is implied by chemistry. Does that mean life exists prior to? The classic example, I think, is math, right? We can look at the world and see logical relationships all over the place. But does that mean that math existed, or are we just constructing a representation of reality kind of in an abstract form? Another question, though, I think, the physicist in the room might want to weigh in on this is, if time is co-present, we treat it like a fourth dimension that all exists. Everything that ever exists or will exist or has existed is currently in existence in some perspective. The other way to look at this, though, again, kind of from a physics background, is, there's this idea of this light cone, where there's certain things that are forever apart from influence. Does anything that supposedly exists in that realm even matter? Bringing it back to philosophy, though, could we also talk, I think, Ron, this is what you're talking about. What about our experiential cone, right? That's kind of a different concept where if we don't experience it, what does it mean to talk about it? However, you rightfully brought back the idea of waves and influence. Yeah, I think I'm gonna leave it there because I want to think more about this question that you raised about art. And I wonder about whether the art exists or it's the style or the genre. But I'll leave somebody else talk. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Kerry. Now, the word existence is such a problem. It comes up again and again and again because we don't really realize what that even means. In what way does anything exist? And my question, my basic question, I seem to come back to this again and again, is that the existence can only be known about. You just carry ask the question about if we don't experience something, does it exist? No, not for us. It doesn't. It doesn't. We can't even explain it or describe it. It's a blank. Somebody can tell us about experiencing, and that might help. But that doesn't mean that we can experience the same thing. In fact, most of us, I think, don't experience exactly the same thing. I don't think we can.
Well, and then there's the question of what our experience actually relates to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all in our heads, right?
Yeah. Well, my answer to that would be that it relates to our memory. Cannot be anything else. Has to be a memory of something, right? That's how I look at it anyway. Oh, thank you, Kerry. Hi, Claudia. I'm glad you could make it.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep, now you can, yes.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is a very difficult topic. I tend to agree, lean towards that nothing is new. Well, at least most things are not new, the vast majority, but I'm not sure about every single thing in the universe. It's not new. Like you mentioned, artificial intelligence. That's a fascinating topic. I'm not an expert in it at all, but I believe that's contingent. It's contingent on human intelligence, right? It's modeled after human intelligence. And I think human intelligence, the discovery of human intelligence or its existence is also, if the physicalists and the evolutionary biologists are correct, the brain, it's contingent on the physical human brain itself, right? It's of evolution over time. You know, it's the intelligence is contingent on the increase in size of the human brain, and also on the skull itself, right? Kerry mentioned potentials. There's a lot of things that potentials can be regarded as existent things or discoveries. Well, there's like trillions of things in this universe that have the potential to exist. It's based on a combination of different, you know, elements like quantum elements, chemical, ingredients, a different combination. Just that combination hasn't combined, hasn't been formed yet. So they're out there, ready to exist, but they just haven't. And then you can bring up the fine tuning argument. The laws of physics didn't have to necessarily be the way they are right now in our universe. They could have been trillions of different combinations, cosmological constants, right? It could have been different. Those are potentials as well. Well, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claudio. Thank you. Bill, William.
Thank you. I have been puzzling over the question, who is the observer? Is it an observer like someone in this room like me or you, Ron, or anyone else here? Or is it some kind of collective whole observer composed of everyone who thinks and has experiences in the world? Or is it an omniscient observer who comes to the conclusions that we are talking about here? I mean, the most interesting thing for me is what I know about the discoveries I've made and about the inventions I've created. And that's the process that is a convergence, it seems to me, between my head and the presenting context. And the situation between context and mind is what's happening when we make constructions, when we project our thoughts on the world. And it strikes me that what we're talking about here, invention, and is kind of a variation of discovery. I know how to invent something when I finally get an insight on how it can be just, worked out. That's an invention. I've invented a series of sentences or a series of words that get what I wanted to get to. But is that a discovery or is that an invention? Is the notion that we're talking about a discovery of coming across something we don't know, but a lot of other people know? And I think the notion that we don't know it is the most interesting part, because we're getting a new thing that we hadn't lived in our memory. And if it didn't live in our memory, we didn't know it, but now we do. So the interaction of converging context dependence and mind dependence in going on in our life, puts together some theories and inventions, and discovers theories and refines them as we go forward. And I think that's the beginning of the analysis I need to do to understand this distinction that you're making between invention and discovery. Because they seem to be awfully similar in the sense that they're all head work in contact with the world that we face. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, some very, very good points there. You asked, first of all, about the observer. That's a very good question. My answer is that each one of us is an observer. I don't think there is a universal observer. I don't go in for that. Obviously, no. Each one of us is an observer, and each one sees things in a different way, in perspective, and I think that's an essential point. As I said before, not one of us. No, there are no two people here who will see things in the same way. They physically can't do it because they're in different locations. However close they are to each other, physically and mentally, they must see things differently. Physically, because light takes different amount of time to get to each one, and therefore each one is slightly in a different tense, in a future, in a past. Somebody's closer than somebody else. At the moment, we're all looking at a flat screen. But if I look down to the left or the right, I'm looking slightly further. So basically, in theory, I'm seeing that square later than I'm seeing the square in the middle. So that's that regarding the observer. And I agree with you, Bill, that it's very, very close. That was a problem with what I was working out for this talk. That what is an invention? If an invention is based on something that's come before, and I can't see how it's not. I cannot see something coming from absolute nothing. A thought comes into your head and you say, oh, I never thought of that before. But in fact, it comes from something triggered it. So would you call that an invention? And regarding language that you mentioned, I don't think, from what I understand from linguistics, the things you say are not invented. They are combinations of different forms that you've heard before, and they're put together. You might never have heard them before, ever. That combination of words to make that sentence, but they are made up of things that you've heard, that you've read. So are those inventions? I don't think so. I see them more as discoveries. And I agree with Kerry when he said that we are talking about limitations and borders. And we had, hi James, just noticed you're here. Good to see you. Good to see you. We about, I don't know, a couple of years ago, we had a whole Zoom thing on borders, and that was it's all interesting, and it's all linked. Everything we ever talk about has to be linked, and that comes back to your observer thing. So we're all observers of something, and the people who've been coming here observe things slightly differently from other people because of what they heard, whether they agree or not. Anyway, very, very good points. Thank you. Terry.
Hello. On this one, we've known each other for years, but I always get a little confused with this. I know that you are a fan of science. I know that you like the scientific viewpoint, and maybe sometimes more than you've met. And yet, when we talk about things not existing, that's where I always wind up going like, I'm not sure I understand how these two fit together. And I'm still a little puzzled on that. But I think you have a definition of existence that relies far more on awareness, the idea of what we're trying to do. And as we talked before, I very much can see that, because there's what was the term I used one? Pragmatic solipsism. The idea that you really are fooling yourself if you think you know everything that's going on out there. That's just that's a bit of a deception. You can never eliminate the possibility that you're just part of a simulation and none of it's real, because there's no test you can do to do that. So the reality does begin there. So I think I understand that aspect of it, although I have to admit I'm always a little conflicted on trying to interpret that from my heavily scientific evidence-based. I'm absolutely adamant about the importance of reproducible evidence for understanding the universe with that. So I just a little baffled with that. Moving on. I had a question, Ron. If you forget something, does it still exist?
No.
Okay, that's a straightforward answer.
You asked me, I answered it. No, it's gone. It's gone. It's gone. For
it's
you.
gone. Okay,
for you.
All right. And actually I kind of understand that. I see what you're getting at. But in a sense, we forget things all the time. I don't remember 99.99% of my life sitting here right now because I don't have that.
All gone. All gone.
What?
All gone.
All gone. But
all
it is
gone.
I mean, we only live in this little narrow attention thing, which is a big topic in AI. What is attention? And it also deals with whether you have a realistic AI. Switching topics, AI, your points about generation, yes, there are cases, at least in the case of AlphaGo, where the system suddenly was able to come up with rules for play that no human had ever come up with. That's the only example I know of, and there may be some more recent ones, where AIs have actually done something beyond that. But it's a very, very restricted case where the environment could be totally simulated, which is never true for the real world. And my problem these days is, as someone who literally helped develop, enable, there was a time where I defended Jan LeCun where nobody else was defending him. I had a role in some of this, and I see the value of these AI systems. I am horrified at how they're being used. There's no other word for it. These things are not humans, and they don't have human sentience. They don't have smarts. They're dumb as stumps. And that's heretical to a lot of people who say, I said, it's so impressive. No, it's impressive in the same way a con man is. It steals like crazy. It steals everything. And that's all that's going on. If you've got the guy who has the radar and sees every other test in the room, yeah, he's going to come out with having at least as smart of an answer on his test as everybody else, but he did it by cheating. And these systems are essentially global cheaters. They just go out and they grab whatever answer they think, and then they just randomize a little bit, which makes it terrifying, because you can't randomize engineering. You can't randomize the development of the system without any kind of oversight. You can use that for inspiration. There's a difference. You create a little bit of randomness for inspiration. It's fine. It's necessary. Random just for the sake of looking smart, because you can put two big words together and you have no idea what they mean, which these systems don't.
There you go.
That's terrifying. And so I'm going to think these days that I'll have to get a reference from you later about what this latest reports are. But man, I don't trust anything I see on the internet anymore. I saw a conversation. It was supposed to be a conversation about how Japanese reacted to the first Caucasians. And I got about 2 minutes into it. It was very interesting. I thought, this is probably AI generated. This is probably not real. And maybe it was real. I don't know anymore. You can't trust some of these things that seem respectable. Then you go like, wait a minute. There's certain indicators where these are AI generated hallucinations in many cases. But there's a lot of going on. So there's my thing on AI. It's interesting.
Terry, I thought that you'd attack me mercilessly for my point, but now I'm not sure. What do you say about? You say they're not intelligent. I accept that. What do you say about them doing things faster than we can do them?
They can do things enormously faster.
Exactly.
The reason why AlphaGo that was the only case I can think of where I got a chill down my back, where I go, oh my gosh, what have we done? Because AlphaGo really did come up with rules and explanations and ways of playing that game that humans had not come up with after centuries.
That's my point, Terry.
So in about a week.
But it's dangerous. That's my point.
And the other point, though, is what I'm suggesting is the moment you take that out into the real world, it gets a lot more complicated. And the second point is what's going on now is mostly a marketing con. This is not real. This is thievery on a massive scale of people's individual creativity. So instead of having open source, you have klepto source. Instead of everybody contributing voluntarily, it just goes out and grabs it. I saw something where you could put 2 lines on Microsoft's little AI thing, and it literally grabs the entire history of everything you've ever done in your computer because it lets itself answer some other questions by using that kind of information. The danger is this stuff degrades over time because the more everybody cheats, it's just what happens. If everybody's cheating, then eventually nobody does homework and the whole thing goes apart. And we're in some serious danger right now with what's being purported to be AI, but it is not. Now, I do think you can have machine intelligence. In fact, I'm one of the people who just very interested in possibilities and different approaches to do that, and even have suggested some very interesting little papers lately on that very issue. A little bit more on Penrose's quantum consciousness, but I'm saying there's caution there. We should be careful when people tell us these systems are doing that. I remember seeing that thing about the 2 computers talking years ago. That was a long time ago. I've never heard anything more from that. So I don't know exactly what happened with that one. That would be an interesting little thought. Maybe there's been some new work on it. But
anyway, we'll come back to that most probably. I still want to be attacked for what I said. I'll wait. Okay. I'll wait for you to do it.
Attack you for?
I just want to. I want to be attacked.
For which part?
We'll come back to it.
All right.
Okay.
Now I have to be leaving as in 3 minutes. So
oh, that's terrible. Are you coming back?
Yeah, so I've got a granddaughter who's doing a recital. So
very nice.
Alas and alack, that takes priority there.
Very nice. That's a priority. Enjoyed.
I don't believe in block universes. So I think everything develops, everything has a past. What do you call that? Invention or discovery? I'm not sure. Maybe we need a different word. See you guys later.
Okay. Enjoy the afternoon, the day. Bye. Hi, Anton. Good to see you.
Hello. So I will, even though I won't attack you, I think one of the things I'm going to say, or if not everything I'm going to say, is fundamentally different than the idea of nothing is new. But you might be interested in it. It partly one of the, I'll get to it when I'll say what I'm saying. So since what's new is relative to what one knows or what we think we know, it's possible in some grand encompassing. Now, this does tie in with the possibility of there being a universal perspective that everything that is real in our reality is something that has already existed. But what we call new is the realization of something that has already existed, but just hadn't yet been known, which actually relates to something that Bill said. Bill was just talking about it on an individual level. Like, what if there's something you didn't know, but many other people know? Is it possible to know everything? Well, it's more or less difficult for my mind to comprehend such, even if it is. However, I do think that there can be a thing of anything that is created. This is my view of new. Anything that is created, realized, or discovered that is in some noticeable way distinct from what was known previous, at least when we think linear time, is what can be called new. So I don't think that something has to be 100% new in order for us to call it new. It's possible that we live in an existence, though, and this is still talking about linear time, where both what is known to exist and where there is both what is known to exist and what has yet to exist. So it may indeed be a process of unfolding as we witness the yet to exist. And then I had the question to myself, can something be since I don't think that what is new has to be 100% new, can something be a mixture of what has been discovered and what is invented? Well, that depends on if you think what is new has to be utterly new, or if there's, what do I want to say, different extents of what we're calling new. I'm not sure if I communicated that clearly, but these are multiple thoughts that I have about this.
Thank you, Anton. You realize that if you're not talking about 100% new, you're actually cheating, because what you're no, I mean that in the nicest way, because my point is that we want to say, can something be new, entirely new? And you're saying, well, it might be partly new, in which case it's not new, as far as I'm concerned.
Is that I mean, it might be because I missed what you said previously, but is that the dictionary? And it might be, I just might be naive. Is that the dictionary definition of new? Is it clearly something that's purely new?
I have to shock you. I don't believe in dictionaries. If I believe in dictionaries, we wouldn't have philosophy. We just look it up. What's consciousness? What does it say in the dictionary? That's it. We can all go home. No, that's not the point. The dictionaries are what they are, but there's nothing to do with us here.
Well, I will say this. To your point. I don't think, not just for philosophy, but for the sake of any conversation, that it always has to be dictionary definitions, even if you disagree with that. So yeah, it doesn't always have to be dictionary definitions, but I just went to that just because of the fact that, like, is that for the sake of this, since you're saying new has to be entirely new, then no, there would be very limited things that are entirely new. If that's the way that we're discussing the word new, but that's not the way I typically think about it.
No, obviously, no, that's fair enough. That's what I said right at the end. We know and we feel things are new, and they're not new. Those are our feelings, and I'm not that bothered about what we feel, but because we use language, and something is new. We see something new. We see a new. We read about a new, as I mentioned, island. And that is for us new. It's new.
Yeah, subjective view.
Yeah, well, it's what I'm saying is that before we knew about it, it just didn't exist for us. Just didn't. It can't do.
Yeah, for us, exactly.
For us. But
we do have a different. Just quickly, and I don't know. You probably want to go on to the next person. We do have a different view. We do have a different view on whether or not things exist independent of your own view.
Yeah,
so,
true. Yeah. True. No, it's a very long and deep subject, but you're absolutely right. And thank you very much, Anton. Thank you. Frank, good to see you again.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be here, a welcoming group. Your questions are great. They're exactly the same questions I have. I'm sorry I don't have any answers. I have the same puzzlement that I think you're posing, and I'm very interested in reading about philosophy, and also interested in reading about science. And seeing that this area is an area of so much convergence, when you get into the early, quantum mechanics and the conflict between Niels Bohr and Einstein, that Einstein just flat out said, do you really believe that the dark side of the moon does not exist because we can't see it? At one sense, it seems so intuitively obvious to ordinary people that object constancy, something that, we develop over time, tells us that this object must exist. At the same time, until recently, the Chinese landed a lander on the dark side of the moon. We couldn't prove it, right? So, does it exist or does it not exist? I struggle with that. In two parts, One is, how some scientists talk about how nothing is unstable, right? But when you try to identify nothingness, you can think about it conceptually, but nothingness, empty space is this teeming area of quantum particles popping in and out of existence. You can look at this space and confirm that nothing is there, and then the next instant something is there. Is it there when you're not looking at it? It's difficult to answer that without getting into linguistic issues, and I try to resist that, trying to just coming up with definitional terms for that. And then before you respond, let me just talk about the other side of that coin. Do things stop existing? Somebody asked you, when you forget something, does it no longer exist? And you, of course, said no, because it no longer exists for you. But again, this is from Einstein, not from quantum mechanics. But we've confirmed that the universe is ever expanding. And to Carrie's point about the light cone, we know that every day there are objects on the size of galaxies that we can see today, but that go across the boundary of this light cone where information can't get back to us ever, right? And so in a sense, every day, objects the size of universes no longer exist. Now, are they still there outside of our ability to ever observe and then confirm that they're there? I'm sorry, I still I struggle with that. You've got a very firm, quick answer. No, it no longer exists. I admit I have a hard time. I understand I can never prove that these objects that go outside of the light cone, nobody can ever, it's not just me personally, it's that they're beyond the light cone where which information can come back to it and reach us. So nobody on planet Earth can confirm that these objects exist anymore, right? I struggle with that, right? So I'm not asking you to defend or explain that, but did you have a comment?
You're not asking me. We're going to do it anyway. we need to we need to unpack a lot of the stuff you just said. You are confusing observing with knowledge. If we can't see it, one of the most, I have to say, it's one of the most stupid things Einstein ever said was that, because he was talking about something completely different. It's obvious if we can't see something that it can still exist because we know about it and we worked it out. When Copernicus, etc., when they talked about the Earth going around the sun, etc., nobody could see that. We can't see. We can see the sun going around. That's nothing to do with it. They worked it out. We now know it works mathematically, etc. We know we don't have to observe the other side of the moon to know it exists. We don't have to observe it, and it doesn't make it exist more when we see it. We just worked it out. So you got to be careful. So when those things beyond the light cone disappear, it doesn't mean that we don't know about it and it doesn't exist anymore. It does exist because we know about it. But if we didn't know about it, how can we possibly say that it exists? In what way does it exist when we don't know about things that exist? I just can't. I can't see that. I won't go into the nothing bit because I wrote a book about it and we talk about it nearly every time. Somebody always mentions nothing and nothingness, so I can go into it later. But when you look at space, you're not looking at nothing. You're looking at space, etc., etc., and the fact that there are things in there disappear, etc., etc. Real nothing, the absence of everything, including yourself, you wouldn't even be able to talk about it. And the fact that things appear out of nothing, they don't. because if it's nothing, there'd be no potential for something to appear. Anyway, that's a very brief summary of my stuff about nothing, but it's very, very brief.
No, that's good. I mean, it's a good distinction about observing versus knowing. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Frank. Very, very interesting. Thank you. Tim.
Yeah, so I think your view here either is faced with a contradiction or a rampant relativism. So let me start with the contradiction that I see. So I think the proposition that dinosaurs existed 200 million years ago is both true and false to someone in the Middle Ages. Because you said that perception is existence, and I'm assuming that you agree that dinosaurs perceived each other. So they must have existed at a particular time. If you don't like that, I can switch to humans a million years ago, but at any rate, dinosaurs existed because they perceived each other. No?
No, I made it clear that I'm talking about human observers.
Okay, so let's change.
I have no idea what dinosaurs thought or saw or if they existed, except what other people told me about them, which I accept. It's it's knowledge. I accept it.
I can change the example to Neanderthals, say, because humans observed Neanderthals. So then Neanderthals existed at one time, correct?
For them.
For them, for those humans who are perceiving them. Then in the Middle Ages, say, they forgot that Neanderthals existed. So for a person in the Middle Ages, Neanderthals did not exist, correct?
Correct.
So the proposition Neanderthals existed is both true and false at that time. Because they existed in the past, but they don't exist now. And then we rediscovered them and they exist again. So these things pop out of existence and then come back into existence later. That's your view, right?
No, it isn't. Sorry.
That's good.
No.
All right, then you face the contradiction.
No, well, no, it isn't.
Either you hit a contradiction, which is
I didn't though.
They both exist and don't exist.
No.
At a particular time.
No, at a particular time when it existed, it existed. When humanity did not know that of their past existence, they did not exist anymore. The fact that they exist again at another time has nothing to do with when they did not exist. It's
okay.
There's no connection.
That's fine. That's how you answer. How you answer that contradiction.
Okay.
Right? Then you're faced with relativism, right? Because then you didn't exist for me more than a month ago, because I only met you a month ago. I didn't exist for you, right? That's even more absurd for me, because I know I existed a month earlier.
Yeah.
But I didn't exist for you, and you don't exist for me.
Correct.
So basically, somebody who doesn't believe that the world is more than 8,000 years old, for them, it didn't exist more than 8,000 years ago. The dinosaurs didn't exist, right?
Okay, and
we're faced with that's a relativism, right?
No, but
I'm not sure how you can do science anymore.
No,
when each person can just have their own view about what exists and what doesn't exist.
Well, each person does, because a month ago you did not exist for me, but existed for you. So that's
you have no argument to someone who denies, say, evolution.
No, no, it's not a matter of
stars.
No, it's a matter of knowledge.
You just have nothing to say to them, because for them it doesn't exist, and for me it does.
I can't convince people who don't believe in God to believe in God, and vice versa. There's nothing I can do about it.
That may be true, but certainly, you want to say there's a good argument for someone who doesn't believe that stars exist, or that the moon, or that the moon or the Earth is not flat.
But it's not a matter of belief, it's a matter of knowledge. You know that people are saying something about something, and that's
but
knowledge.
Then you're back to truth, right? So knowledge is true belief, right? So then you have some criteria for truth, which is independent of our belief. So that is not just true for you that I didn't exist a month ago.
I can't talk about truth. We did a whole thing on truth, I think more than once. But no. But I see your point, and thank you very much. But there are answers which you might not agree with. But I mean, it's okay. It's fine. I understand you. Thank you very much, Tim. Thank you.
Sure.
Terry, before you speak, because you're ready, can I move on to Samuel before you, because he hasn't been on yet? Thank you. Hi there, Samuel. Welcome back.
Hello. And there's a question I want to ask. I don't know. I'm not really sure on this question. So if you take possibilities, are possibilities something you invent, or do you discover possibilities?
Okay. Get out. Okay.
Was the line so blurry between, I don't know, can it be because if a possibility was invented, then if a possibility was invented, that means every single possibility that could have ever been would have to been invented, and that means the entire day of invention, which just wouldn't be.
Yeah.
So,
if everything is possible, then we're in big trouble, because some things are not possible, right? We can only know if there's a possibility when the possibility comes out and we see it. But if that doesn't happen, we can say there's a possibility that there are fairies at the bottom of your garden. Right? It's a possibility, but it doesn't make any sense apart from the fact that there's a possibility that fairies come and clean up your house every day. They come in from the garden. You can say, yeah, but it's possible. And what can I say to that? You see, what I'm saying is it only means something when you say that was a possibility and now it's happened. So I think that it's a good point of yours about possibilities, but it doesn't mean anything until they come to fruition, as far as I can see. It's a very good question, Samuel. I'm not usually silent when I get questions. Thank you very much. You can come back on whenever you want. Okay. Well, Kerry, you've moved to the right.
Yeah,
okay.
Zoom decided to lower my hand.
Okay. Okay. Let's move on and get back to you, okay? The people who haven't yet spoken. Debbie, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, maybe I'll try and comment also to Samuel about his really good questions about possibilities and about whether they are inventions or discoveries. But I think perhaps the notion of the thought of a possibility, the idea that we could have a few options, could be related to the way we as humans with a mind, with consciousness, with reason, think in the way of possibilities, that things could happen or things couldn't happen. This is something that perhaps this is our inquiring mind when we look at the world. And I think when there are possibilities, you can perhaps put possibilities in the context of logical possibilities. So you've got endless possibilities, and perhaps I don't want to get into that, but possible worlds, I'm not going to get into that big field, but that things could happen. So you've got logical possibilities that perhaps, I don't know, pigs are going to start flying. It is a logical possibility, but it's not very realistic. Or it is possible that God exists or not without getting into religious belief. But I think perhaps Samuel, to perhaps distinguish between or to talk about possibilities in a serious way, perhaps that's where science comes in and tells you what the framework or what the boundaries of possibilities of something that we predict or think of. When we try perhaps to think about the possibilities, we do try to put it in a scientific method, in a way of thinking, in a way of trying to distinguish between possible or realistic possibilities or perhaps logical possibilities. So were possibilities invented or discovered? I think, Samuel, that's perhaps what you asked, I think. So perhaps possibilities, that's what I think we could think of it as a human capability, human mind capability of the way that we explore the world, like causation, that things have a cause and effect, induction, that we generalize things about the world, and where they invented, like mathematical thoughts, numbers, and that is that is one of the biggest questions. And there were philosophers who tried to answer to where we have that. Is there a God that can guarantee our validity or truth about the things that we discover? Well, yeah, so I would say possibilities is a way of thought, and whether it was invented or not, that would be whether how our innate concepts or the way we perceive the world, whether invented or not, that's a question of the Zoom. I don't know. But I wanted to also relate, I don't know if that answered, Samuel, your question, but I also wanted to relate a bit to the AI notion here about, Ron, how you presented AI as them being inventive. And I'm not sure we could talk about AI as inventive. I think that's why you call, for example, the ChatGPT, they're generative. So they're not inventive, but they can create context from an algorithm which was designed by humans. And the fact that AIs are getting dangerous, it's not so much because of the machine. I think it's because of the humans. It just shows how the human touch or the human hand has to be involved in AI. For example, in regulations, in defining it, in not letting it become completely detached from the human. That's my input for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. I just want to point out, I said the exact opposite about AI.
Oh.
I did not say it was invented. I said my point was that it's relying on what came before. My point was it's doing it so fast that it's going beyond the point that we can understand. That was my point. It is generating, as you said, it is, but it's doing it so fast that it leaves us behind. It leaves us at a point where we don't understand what's happened because we're not there yet. And I find that frightening because they will understand things that we can't yet. and we won't for a while.
I'm not sure. I think still you need humans for that, and they can go loose if humans do not restrict it. And relating to what Terry said, that at the moment the machines are very stupid. They are, because they do depend on your prompts, and they do. I'm talking about generative text AI, which I use. But the problem with AI is designing weapons and letting AI do their stuff. It's human communication, letting AI decide whether you get a mortgage or not. That's a problem. And whether you're entitled to whatever, whether you can vote or not, when it's misused, and that is misused by humans and not by the machine, and that calls, I think, that really shows how humans are needed to regulate and to stop not knowing what is real, because humans do know. Well, okay, but more than the AI. and I think we still want the human, because I think if we pose the question of would we want this omnibus computer, yeah, I mean, who could know anything, who is, I don't know, the biggest and the cleverest computer ever, would we want it to make decisions for us, political decisions, or decide whether to go to war, or decide how to govern a country? I am not sure we would want that. I think we would still want somebody, a human, to make global huge decisions. So humans are still necessary, and I'm one of the optimists who think that at some point governments and big institutions will realize that they need to be, that the human needs to take control. and it's about that. But it's a shame Terry's not here to put me in place or not, because I also, as you said, it's going so fast, so I'm not keeping up with everything that's coming out about it. But yeah.
Thank you very much, Debbie. I disagree with quite a bit of that, but I'll leave that for another. Thank you very much. Thank you. James, good to see you. Miss you last month.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, no, we're doing a Hegel thing. That's why I'm late today.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
And I'm kind of in a loop of, I'm almost in a loop of Zoom classes again, because we were, there's another one with Deleuze and Guattari, right? And
yeah.
So it's like, I hear these things, or read these things rather, and I don't even necessarily remember that well where it was that I read them. I think in the Deleuze and Guattari Oedipus complex book, I was reading something about the people get involved in the totalitization of everything. So this is like a kind of like a logical error we tend to make. We totalize everything, everything is new, or everything new is a totality, or can we say, and forgive me if I'm talking like a baby, because I didn't catch what was originally presented. I just came in when William was describing it, and heard everyone else. So there's that kind of like idea that we have to totalize everything, and we won't. I just wanted to mention, if we know something exists, right? If we have a independent object, in Aristotle's terms, it's like it doesn't. We don't necessarily know the causality of it. So that things have causes, but causes are, of course, easy to get those wrong, easy to we don't sort of like leap in and say, this is a monkey, what's the cause of a monkey? You know, it's always another monkey, right? But it takes a while for people to sort of figure those things out. So let's and the idea of the totalitization of everything. I don't want to give Deleuze credit for that, but maybe it was him. It's this idea that you're always jumping in, you know, with a kind of like, yeah, I'm an empiricist, I know everything, you know, because it's all there. It's everything has a cause, and everything is actually we treat. I don't know what the point about the newness is, but the discovery versus invention, because even when you discover it, it may or may not be new, and if you invent it, it may not have, that also may not be new. We might be reinventing. So I'm not sure how that all matches up. But so I just wanted to mention that aspect of causality. You know, like if you do, we don't. If there is a thing, we don't necessarily need to know the cause. And there's just so many things that we don't know that we can't. And this idea that things disappear, you know, like if you don't know about them, is kind of like that same idea, you know, like what can I say about that? And I want to thank Anton, because Anton was trying to match this concept together with subjectivity, and I think that's really important to sort of like, oh yeah, so there's subjectivity that kind of arises that affects whether we consider things to be independent or not, whether we consider things to be new or not, and whether and you know how what we arrive at in terms of what we consequentially arrive at in terms of this is true or this is not necessarily true. You know, so I think that's a it's important. It's an important contradiction in empiricism, and so I think that needs to be investigated in a phenomenological way. You can arrive at your own conclusions. I'm not against that, but it's not just taking the kind of like, oh, it doesn't exist path is not really helpful, because it's too unrelated to the what caused you to think it existed in the first place, or what caused the conversation to arise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James. I just want to mention that just because we don't know the cause of something and it disappears, I don't see the connection. I can't see how something can exist that you don't know about. On a personal level, I just can't get that. It just doesn't make sense to me.
But that's also a definition of solipsism. So I'm just saying the idea that things only exist that we know about is a philosophy called solipsism.
Well, not really, because solipsism is that only I know what exists and other people don't. I do know that other people know things that exist that I don't know about. I just don't know what they know. As soon as they tell me, I'll be okay. I will then know. But if anybody can believe anything, which is fair enough. But if I don't know it, I just don't know it. It doesn't help me. And what you just told me, I now know. I didn't before. I didn't. But as soon as you mention it, there it is. I now know it. I think that's fair, isn't it?
It's because it's the totalization. You're totalizing everything you don't know, and you're totalizing everything you know, and it's not. Those are not actual things. They're not actual realities. They are just like you're just simply assigning baskets.
Actual reality.
They're imaginary baskets that don't actually exist.
Actual reality is a red flag for me, as you know. Thank you very much, James. Thank you, Maurice. You've been very, very. Very quiet and wonderful. Have a go.
How kind.
Thank you so much. You're a very patient bloke.
I wasn't around for the last two meetings, and I missed them. And I missed you as well. And all I'm going to do is just mention a few things which are very, very personal. and it may mean nothing whatsoever to everybody else. But the first thing is, you were talking just now about what caused things, the cause of something. And for me, that's a red flag, because I can never accept that we can ever know what caused something. We can surmise that there may be certain causes, but we don't know what caused anything. But anyway, that's not what I want to talk about. We're talking about something new. And when you talked to Tim before, you referred to your new friendship. You've only known each other for a month, so a new friend. And of course, he wasn't new to himself, and you're not new to yourself. But the first time I fell in love, that was a new feeling. That was something which I didn't invent, and I suppose I didn't discover either. I thought I discovered sex, but I was wrong about that as well. But you know, the new love was something which for me was completely new. Nobody had been able up until that point in my life to explain to me what it would feel like. And there it was, and I felt something I'd never felt before, and it was new. I suppose that when Beethoven was sort of idly thinking to himself about, he could hear some sort of music in his head, and he thought, oh, I'll do a bom 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 bom. That's something new, and he wrote a symphony which hadn't existed until that moment. You could say that he took inspiration from all sorts of sources. Of course, he did, and his writing, music, was within the boundaries that were at that time accepted as the framework in which music should be composed. Although he left that framework and did something new, but he heard something in his head, and he wrote it down, and then they played it. It was new at that moment. To him, it was new. And it was new when I first heard that symphony. If I don't hear it now, I haven't got it playing on my headset. Does that mean that it's no longer there? It doesn't exist anymore? I have knowledge of it, you would say. I have knowledge that there is a symphony. But really, my main point here is this thing about the newborn. We say a newborn baby because the baby is new. It's not just the baby that's new. It is, you would say, perhaps, I'm guessing here, that it's a new universe that has been born. Because when that baby grows up and starts learning philosophy, that person will understand that they perceive a universe. That perceived universe would have been born at that moment, or conceived earlier, but the process is of something new. And the newness is not just the biological new baby, it is the new universe that has just been created. I was thinking about AI before, and I had this sort of scenario in my mind of where the AI systems destroy the humanity. I mean, people have written books or made films about these sort of things where the AI takes over and everybody's killed off, and the entire world is destroyed by the AI systems. And then there are a number of AI systems that are left, and they communicate with each other, and they start to send messages to each other about how they have to invent philosophy to explain what on earth all this is about, really. Will they start to think to themselves, AI systems, what are we doing here? What's it all about? For me, even compared to discovering sex or finding love for the first time, maybe the main discovery of my life was death. If I didn't mention death, it wouldn't be me, would it? But, right. And when the human being discovers that is his or her fate, that is, it didn't invent it. It's a discovery. For each person, it is a discovery made out of nothing. It came from nowhere. All of a sudden, the understanding that there is death. This is, it's not exactly yesh mi'ayin, which is the Hebrew word for something from nothing, but it's something going into nothing. And we, all of us, discover that at some point in our lives, early or late. And it's a discovery that's new for every single one of us, isn't it?
Is that it? Or are you thinking?
No, I'm sunk.
No,
I finished.
No, you made some very, very good points, some of which I can't answer, although I will eventually. But the thing about love, I think, was very, very good. There's an answer to that. I can't think of it. But your thing about new baby is not that it's a new. The fact that that particular baby is new, but it's not a new concept. There are babies being born. We all know what a baby is. There it is. It's another one. Not new. That particular baby is new.
Yeah. No, it's not the baby. It is the fact that that baby will perceive a universe that is unique to that baby. That, in your way of thinking, without that baby perceiving that universe, that baby the universe would not exist for that human being.
Well, now you're talking about from the point of view of the baby. Yes,
that's right.
Well,
that's
but the baby doesn't come and say, "Oh, wow, look at that." When he's born, there are things happening to it all the time. There's people hovering over it. They goody, and they're doing things and that.
It's a process.
Yes, exactly. Nothing of it is invented by the baby.
It's not invented. Is it not invented?
He's discovering it.
But the universe that baby will discover in the fullness of time, that universe did not exist before that baby was born.
For that baby, correct. For that baby.
There is only that baby.
Okay, I'm with you on that. Definitely. That brings us back to the point that each of us is an individual. And
some of us more than others.
Correct. But that is
it's very young.
That's a point that I made quite early on, that that the only thing that counts for us is us. That's it. Because anybody, however close they are to us, don't think they cannot see the world the way we do. Exactly. Can't. So I agree with you about love and sex. I'm not sure about. I think people have did it before you did it, but maybe not. No, but you made some.
I'm talking about for me.
No, fair enough.
I invented it.
Of course you did. I know. So anyway, I know you made some very, very good points. It all comes to the last thing I said in my chat was that we all know what new is, and we all know what discovery is. We know, except when we sit here and we really get down to it and say, well, okay, it's a matter of language. I will say that that's new. Say, yeah, well, I don't think that's new, but that's how we manipulate language, and we go through life in that sort of way, each one doing his own or her own thing. No, I agree with everything you said, Maurice. It's just I think it's a matter of boundaries that Kerry talked about. Now, thank you very much, Maurice. Very interesting. Where is Eddie? He was waiting. Where is he?
Here. Yeah. Also, I just wanted to ask a question.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah. Hi. So,
Yeah.
say there was a man who had no idea what a screwdriver was, but then he discovered the parts and created a screwdriver, but he didn't know that someone else already created it. Does he deserve the credit of discovering the screwdriver, though someone else created it and discovered it before him?
Okay, that's a good question. For him, that is absolutely new. Somebody else will say, "What are you talking about? I've got one of those." But I mean, did he invent it? No, but he might invent for himself what he's going to do with it, right?
Yeah.
So that no, it's a very good question. We discover things all the time. Whether we invent anything is the point that I was going on about. I still say no, nobody invents anything, but most people will disagree with me, which is fair enough. I mean, I'm used to it. Well, thank you very much, Eddie. Anything else while you're on?
No, but no, not really. But I do agree with that thing actually. That your point that no one creates anything.
Thank you very much, Eddie. Very, very nice. Very good. I like young people coming here. Thanks. Terrific. So now, thank you, Eddie. Hope you come again. And Samuel. Frank, you can have another go.
Thank you. I'm aware that I see Anne hasn't talked yet. Would you want to give the...
But she hasn't got her hand up. Anne, do you have your hand up? She doesn't.
Oh, no. Oh, okay. Sorry.
No.
Like AI, I'm hallucinating. So. But yeah, some random thoughts. I really liked your comment earlier about the difference between observing something and knowing. I'm still trying to get my hand around that knowing part about it. I think that actually kind of might be helpful for Tim's comment earlier when Tim was talking about dinosaurs perceiving each other long ago. Did they exist or not? They perceived each other, but they couldn't know that they existed, right? Because they don't have the capacity of knowing. So maybe that's a way to think about that, conundrum. I think that you, Ron, and Tim were talking about two different things. You were talking about knowing that something exists. I think Tim was talking about seeing something. Just like I was saying, observing the dark side of the moon doesn't mean it doesn't exist just because you don't observe it. So maybe that's a way to help think about that. Somebody else mentioned romantic love, and I'm kind of glad that you allowed Eddie to go before me, because I was really struggling with what Maurice was saying. That Maurice was a tough act to follow in a sense, because I think that he was kind of talking about the things that I started thinking about when somebody mentioned Plato not referring to romantic love. And, sometimes when I'm not a deep scholar of philosophy, but sometimes when I read about these, what some of the scholars, some of the philosophers think about, one of the ways that I can interpret their thoughts about the world is through the autism spectrum. That they tend to, one way to think about, the major philosophers when they overemphasize rationality and underemphasize our biological nature, they miss, a great part of what we need to know. I'm not sure what that means. So, you know, that's why I was really liking Maurice talking about including that discovery of love as being part of the human experience. So that, I'm glad we had some time for that. The other thing, that these are random, thoughts from what people have talked about. Terry and Debbie were both talking about AI, and when Terry talked about AI stealing, I'm wondering about the line between that and building on the shoulders of giants. Is it the same thing, just with a different valence? Stealing from somebody else who had an original thought is a bad thing, but taking ideas that other people created and putting them together into a novel way is a good thing. Again, where is that line between building on the shoulders of giants being a good thing versus a bad thing? And was there anything else? No, those are just AI solving problems. There are different types of problems. There are actually a class of problems that are very difficult to solve, but easy to verify. Once you have a process, once you have a method, it's easy to confirm that it works. There's so that's good, right? AI could help us with these problems that are very difficult to solve, but once they come up with a solution path, it's easy for people to confirm that, oh, yeah, there's an object here I can create based on that, and I can confirm that that works. But there is also a class of objects, a class of problems that is not easy to verify. So when an AI comes up with a solution, in quotes, to a problem that we can't verify, is that can't be knowledge, right? Until we can verify that there's an instance of it that we've created. Maybe that gets back to Samuel's potential problem, that if AI presents a solution to a problem that we can't verify, maybe we have to consider that to be a potential or the probability of a solution until we can confirm it. I mean, just some random thoughts. So I'll leave it there.
That's very good summary, Frank. That's very nice. I just got to say something else controversial. Sorry about that. The term knowledge to me is problematic. Knowledge implies that you know something that is correct, as far as you're concerned. Now, I've been wondering about that for quite a while. I'm inclined to look at knowledge as just something that you know, and it might be incorrect. Why is that not knowledge? It's assumed that it's correct. I'm grappling with that, because I think knowledge is just knowing something, right or wrong, just knowledge. Now I'm grappling with that, and I just wanted to throw that out.
That's a good nuance. I was thinking about it in terms of knowing, but I think that that's an important distinction that I wasn't thinking about at the moment. Talking about knowledge as a thing, I agree that is a different class of what I was thinking about knowing something. So I'll think about that a little bit more. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, Frank. Kerry, you're a glutton for punishment.
I am indeed. All right, this is getting good. So I have a few comments for Frank. One, my understanding is space is definitely something. If it can expand and it can inflate, and it's a baseline for the quantum foam and all of that stuff. It's more than just a Cartesian coordinate system. Experience, I think, is a form of knowledge, or at least it's best understood as that. Can you deny it? It certainly has existence, and you could say you know of its existence because it's there. I mean, that's the whole Descartes argument from a, you know, maybe a different angle. I think your inquiry is into the Greeks was interesting because other cultures draw different boundaries. Right? There's that famous example, I think it's in the Odyssey, where they talk about the wine-colored sea. And it turns out that the Greeks really didn't differentiate between blue and red the same way we do, you know, and people were wondering what the hell Homer was talking about. You know, and then I mean, the Greeks were very explicit with the various types of love, having completely different words for it, whereas we have to kind of string words together to differentiate different types of love. I have a comment for Tim. As my friends, as I grow older, as they die off, do I lose some of my existence? Right? I think there's an argument that I do, depending on how expansive your definition of existence is and interrelation. Ron, you anticipated what I was going to say as far as knowledge and something that's false. I mean, what I wonder is, you know, if everything we know at some level is false, what does that say, right? You know, we have people who believe in a spherical Earth. We have people who believe in a flat Earth. Who knows what the actual, you know, if there even is an actual state of affairs that we can define, right? It depends on what level of granularity you want to look at things, right? And how you draw distinctions. And this is kind of my main point is, you know, the whole discovery versus existence question, what could be an answer? Because I'm seeing kind of two options. Either everything exists, right? In which case everything would be a discovery. Or states of being can be new, or maybe a better way to say it is, you know, they were formally unrealized before. And that brings up the question of what is the status of change? Right? If matter can, or energy can't be, you know, created or destroyed or whatnot, everything is predicate on its state beforehand, if we're going to look at time in a linear fashion. And what does it mean to say things change? Because if we're going to say something is new compared to what? So, you know, and I think this goes to Anton's point, is what does it mean for something to be distinct? You know, again, we're back at the boundary question, but I'll leave it there. Thank you.
No, boundaries are very, very important. It was a point I made about it being a continuum. And that we can't just, like in a movie, say, oh, I'm going to stop this, I'm going to look at that point. That change is always a continuum. We can never really say, well, let me have a look at that before, because the before's gone. You're now continuing the continuum, and you keep on and on and on, and you can never cut it. It's completely artificial to say, I'm going to look at that point. There's never a point.
And what's the status of the concept of entanglement? I mean, you start to throw that into the equation, and maybe nothing is distinct at a certain level or in a certain perspective.
Yep. I tried not to get into that. Thank you very much, Kerry. Anne, good. Anne, we can't hear you. Not yet.
Can you hear me now?
No, can't hear you.
Your microphone is too low.
I don't know how to make it lower. Can you hear me?
Just a little bit. You sound like a little mouse on your desk.
Yeah.
I am not. So
That's better.
It's getting better. It's getting better.
okay. If I'm get closer, is it better now?
It's better, but not perfect. At least for deaf people. Turn the button to the turn the button right.
Yeah, put it on 11.
Yeah.
No, now is it better?
Yes.
Now you can hear me better. Okay.
Yeah.
So what I was, it's what I've been struggling with. It's the knowing of the existence of something versus experiencing the existence of something. And then the belief without necessarily the knowledge. And then is it related to faith?
Okay. And you came to a conclusion?
No, it's more like concepts that I've been kind of wondering that,
Yeah.
Because experiencing, it's different from, it's like a different type of knowledge. It's not an intellectual knowledge. And sometimes you experience doesn't mean you can necessarily explain it.
Yeah.
So, but does that mean that it does not exist?
I think Kerry just mentioned that, right? Experience and knowledge.
Yes.
I think, yes, that's what you're saying. Experience, I presume you would know that you're experiencing it.
Yes.
Right? Would
So
you agree with that, Kerry?
Make it real.
I think so. I'd have to think about that.
Experiencing and knowing. That's a good question.
I think so. The more I think about it, the more I think experience is knowledge. I mean, that's kind of what I said, and I was thinking about it again, and I'm still gonna stake my flag there.
No, I think that's fair. Thank you, Anne. That's a very good point. Very good point. Thank you, James.
All right. Yeah, that's some thoughtful questions have come up. I just realized I have a lunch invitation, so I'm externally motivated to fast right now. So if I kind of like don't say anything intelligent at all, that's part of it, of course. The AI came up, and I this idea is like, how is that related to standing on the shoulders of giants? And I just wanted to say, like, in terms of existence, standing on the shoulders of giants means that there's a generational connection of knowledge, so that there's a genetic connection with knowledge, so that you basically, as a human being, you rely on the fact that there are other people that preceded you that were working with the same kind of material that you worked with, and even if the actual names of things have changed or whatever, there's a pattern of humanness to life. So in being a human, and then I think if Terry were here, I don't mean to say I can channel him, but he would have mentioned the transactional nature of AI. The fact that once you have a set, once you've set the learning process for the AI, and that's more or less completed, you have a generative process which is transactional. So in other words, it may not rely on what it has said before, or it may not rely on what was asked before, or it may. But the point is that the transactional nature is not exactly the same as the generations of humans that add up to this concept of standing on the shoulders of giants. The AI is not standing on its gigantic shoulders every time it answers the same question. Probably can get a bit more clever, but that might be a detriment as much as a benefit. And yeah, so that's all. I just sort of wanted to throw that in as a kind of an answer to for Frank. I think that the it's not exactly the same. with AI, and that's really the big complaint, right? Is it's artificial, which is fine, but it's like you can't really compare the two. You know, it's like the real thing operates on a different principle from the artificial thing. So the artificial thing is like a great tool, great benefit, and but it's not doesn't function on the same. It's not exactly working on the same principles of knowledge. Um, and the knowledge question came up, which I'm really proud of. You know that somebody said that I think was just recently saying that knowledge is something that pops up. And how does that condition things if it keeps popping up for people? And that's the idea. That's why you don't take an empirical position. That's why you don't take an empirical position that will get you, that sort of fences you into a corner. You have to take if you're going to take an empirical position, you have to be ready for these contradictions to come up. Like, what if what I don't know is already known by everybody else or someone else? You know, so you don't want to be, you don't want a contradiction like that to fence you into a corner. You want to be aware that you don't know things, and that's okay, you know, but it doesn't mean that the things you don't know aren't true. Thank you.
Thank you, James. I just want to bring up AI for a second because I argue with it. I argue with them. Okay, them, it, he, she, whatever. I make a point and they tell me you're right or you're wrong, and I say yes, but, and I notice it's as if it's thinking, and I know it's not, but it's taking stuff that's come from me, and it's obviously taking stuff that's come from elsewhere and putting it together, and it's coming up with an answer. I'm sorry, I'm saying it's he, but whatever. And I noticed the process, and it's as if I'm speaking to somebody who's generating knowledge. It's as if, and I know it's not, but it's a very, very good imitation of a human being using stuff that it knows, and I can see it, changing its mind. Although I wouldn't like to think it, because yes, you're right, it says, and then it goes into something else. And if I ask the same question twice, I get a different answer, which I find quite amazing, by the way. So I'm not actually sure, or even thought about it that much, whether the process is the same. You're saying it isn't, and you might be right, but how and why, I don't get. And I think eventually we will be so fooled, and that's the problem today. We will be fooled by it, and we're already fooled by it completely. The person comes on and he sees himself, he hears his voice, he knows it wasn't him, but it's him with a voice saying something he never said. This is the danger today. And they're acting just like us, but bad. Well, there are people like that anyway. So I don't know where it's going. I mean, nobody knows where it's going. Even people who pretend they do, they don't know. They can't know. But thank you.
I admire you for engaging it. That's something that I can't really do. As soon as it gets me pissed off, refuses me, I just say, you know, close. Yeah.
No, I argue like crazy. I think they don't like me. But anyway, thank you very much, James. Thank you. Okay. Richard, you're next.
Yeah. Okay. First, because you raised the AI bit, I know I'm 20 years out of date virtually, because as soon as I could avoid computers, AI, anything to do with research, no, actually, within a couple of years, I got stuck into poetry and literature and tried to forget everything about computing. But the way it was you say, if it was an expert system, you would have a database. Say an expert system about medical knowledge, you would have a database. You would then have an engine that worked out ways, using a certain amount of logic, using Bayes' theorem. Basically, it's not true knowledge. Then the other way is using statistical knowledge. Then the other way is using a script. if you've ever talked to a salesman or a Jehovah's Witness, they appear to have more knowledge to refute your arguments because they're relying on a script. They have no real knowledge of whatever, Hebrew, the Bible, whatever you're talking about, if they're selling something, but they know their script because they've learned it off by heart. They'll know, say they're selling encyclopedias, they will have learnt a certain amount from the encyclopedia and they can quote from it. This is not real knowledge. Now, as I said, because of neural networks and the advance in that, computers can now learn, but this is not consciousness. Anyway, go back to what I was going to say originally, and that is, and I can be short about this, I think it's a false dichotomy you've got there between ontology and epistemology. I don't see them as being contradictions. I see them as two different branches. One is, I must admit that if you take ontology within a religious context, you can argue from first principles that God must exist or whatever. I think that was Anselm. But normally ontology is just the study of factual knowledge of being, if you like. And then epistemology is the study of the way that we know about what it is. So they aren't contradictions. So therefore, it's a false dichotomy. So therefore, really, we don't have to argue about this. I'll leave it there.
But I do. But I do have to argue about it.
Well, no, we can't argue about everything. Look, if you and I sit over a bottle of wine, we'll argue about it.
Correct.
That's the whole point about it. We enjoy arguing.
Correct. But thank you, Richard. Claudio.
Yes. Earlier, we were talking about dinosaurs. Some people speculate that although they saw each other, let's say when they were last alive 66 million years ago, like they were on the Earth for hundreds of millions of years, longer than us. Does that mean because they lack self-awareness or our type of intelligence that they don't really exist in their own eyes? Because they lack that self-awareness, not just about themselves, about other dinosaurs. I don't know about that. Like, for example, like the Hadron Collider that uses a non-human detectors to detect particles, and they can also cause the wave function to collapse. So for non-human, even lower animals can cause, according to many scientists, they can cause the wave function to collapse. A cat, your cat or a dog, if they act as observers, right? Even an atom itself could do that. So if that's possible, if that's true, then why can't dinosaurs, create their own reality, know that detect reality, knowing that becoming aware that they exist and they're as real as anything else, right? Just like even human beings during human evolution, at one point they lacked self-awareness like dinosaurs, and they were not aware of death. They did not know that they themselves eventually died off, or they were not even aware that their fellow human beings, eventually died. They were not aware of that. But does that mean that death was non-existent? Something to think about. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Claudia. Thank you very much. Debbie.
Yeah, just last thing.
Second last thing
or third. I just wanted to clarify about, you were talking about knowledge, that knowledge can be false, but it's a bit difficult for me to actually adopt the term false knowledge, because I would say that perhaps according to the wide perception of philosophers, knowledge has to be true, or that truth is a fundamental component of knowledge. So knowledge cannot be false. I'm as a not as a general claim. We're not going to get. I don't want to get into the true belief of what knowledge is, but truth. Not everybody has knowledge. So if I have, I think, or that Earth is flat, you wouldn't say that I have knowledge. You would say I had a false belief. Maybe I think it's knowledge. And also that is, we're not, and I'm not getting into, of course, a justified point, because I could, I don't know, just throw a dice and always be true, correct. And in all my predictions, would we say that I have a true belief, that I have knowledge when I've just randomly got everything right? I think we would say not, but that's the when you're talking before about false knowledge, I think that this is a contradiction in terms. Knowledge has to be true, and we can find out, and we have done, as humans have been wrong, but then we say, well, they didn't have that, it wasn't knowledge, and this is knowledge now. They held a false belief. So this is just the last about knowledge. So if somebody thinks that Earth is flat, that is not knowledge. He's wrong, and he's holding a false belief, and it's easy to prove him wrong. And perhaps that also relates to our last Zoom about entitlement to opinions, and perhaps that could even be considered an opinion. I think the Earth is flat, but it's definitely not knowledge. When I say definitely, probably not. That was my
okay. You trod into the minefield of truth.
Of course, I know it is definitely a problem.
Once you start that, you say that it has to be true. You say, what do you mean? What is truth? And then then yes, okay, that's a good point. Fair enough.
But I think if we talk, and that relates to what I said before about our methodology of knowing what it means to know. That's the other part of justified. How do I justify it? And of course, that's a huge whole field of philosophy, how to justify what's considered true or not. But I think we could agree that Earth is not flat, and I can use scientific tools or scientific means for people who have researched that and know.
But you could say it wouldn't help. It wouldn't help convince somebody who thinks the Earth is flat. Would not convince him or her at all.
That's exactly why they don't hold knowledge, because if they're not open to hear and check and be critical about their claim, that's exactly the opposite of knowledge. Knowledge has to be adopted, has to be acquired by checking, by being critical, by perhaps checking all possibilities and having a method of inquiry. That is the discovery, perhaps, or the invention of what it means to hold and to try to acquire knowledge as opposed to information. I can gather a lot of information, but if I really want knowledge of what is true and what is right and how can I act in the world, then I need to have a method of inquiry, a method of how to think, how to get to that certain knowledge, and not just by throwing a dice, for example. So that's why I could use a dice method, which perhaps still now would be all correct, all right, but I'm not sure you would want to rely and trust that way of discovery, of invention. So you need to have that method, which till now has been a reliable tool of knowing and discovering the world. And
I don't know. Listen, there are so many different theories that are all true as far as even science. There's so many theories, each one saying this is correct, that's correct. Which one of them is knowledge? That's a huge topic. So we don't need to go into it, but you're treading into truth again. And scientists who say we're looking for the truth, I don't really go for it, because they won't find the truth. They'll find a better way of explaining something. But the truth,
true, exactly. That's the best way till now that has been discovered, perhaps, in explaining a phenomena. And that is the scientific way. You check it. You do not accept it as granted, and you carry on trying. If we go by Popper, okay, another by saying that science actually is rational because we are trying to falsify it. There are options, there are possibilities that can falsify my theory. There's no real theory that can falsify my belief in God, because everything can validate it. There is no theory that could falsify the belief in God. It just does not exist. And that is perhaps from the 60s, from Karl Popper, that perhaps the task, the role of science is not to validate theories, is to try and falsify. There is a way to falsify a theory. And whether I see Kerry's nodding his head. Anyway, but this is what I'm presenting is the perhaps the canonical way of viewing what knowledge is. And it's very difficult for me to accept that knowledge can be false. I do want to find a way where I can differentiate and say why NASA scientists and a flat earther have some difference, an epistemic difference, and also a moral difference, and perhaps a psychological difference as well, but I'm not getting into that. But you want to be able to find some sort of theory or method to differentiate between theories, even though it would never be 100%, would never be completely true. That's perhaps the paradox of being a scientist, that you want to find truth. On the other hand, you always have to hold epistemic skepticism and always be able to check yourself and be critical and find other ways that you could falsify the theory. And until then, hold it as knowledge until another theory is discovered or invented. That's a good, I suppose, discovered, I suppose, when it comes to scientific phenomena or natural phenomena.
Thank you very much, Debbie.
Not trying to open any big discussion, of course, about knowledge. No, that was just a little comment.
Exactly. Thank you very much. Frank, you're definitely a glutton for punishment as well.
Fascinating. It's such a delightful group, so I love the conversation. Our artificial intelligence, I love reading about it. I have a comment for James and for Carrie. I agree completely that, we can't think about artificial intelligence as having, knowledge and reasoning the way people do. So, I'm totally with you on that. What I get stuck on is this metaphor that people have thrown up in the past. When people ask, can computers think or can computers reason? They respond with the question, can submarines swim? That we get into the danger of anthropomorphizing technology. It's artificial intelligence because it is artificial. No, hands down. I agree completely. But does it do some things better than we do? A submarine is going to swim, in quotes, much faster and longer and differently than we do. When we ask, is it swimming? Are we just simply applying a human species, chauvinism to another technology? And I think that this is where artificial intelligence can kind of help us, maintain some modesty or some humility about our species to minimize our human chauvinism, that reason is only possible by humans. Conversation and persuasion, we've come to that's a very human type of activity. And I rely on ChatGPT a lot to help me polish my persuasive text. So this is the benefit and the threat of artificial intelligence. There's a huge benefit to our species from what optimizations artificial intelligence can provide for us, but there's also the threat. It's an amazing persuader, and that's part of its threat as well. So I agree with you. I'm concerned about, focusing just on human species chauvinism, that there are other things out there that have value, but that also have threat. So those are one final thing about, Debbie, not being able to prove the negative. I agree completely about that as a Popperian idea. I stopped calling myself an atheist because I was aware. I think of myself as a scientist, and I know that I cannot prove the negative. You can't prove that God doesn't exist. So how can you prove you're an atheist? But I can't, I found a term that was really interesting. Somebody I know said, have you considered apatheist? Are you, basically, when I say atheist, I mean that I'm totally apathetic to the whole question about whether there's theism. I like that term, apatheist. I'm not an atheist because I can't prove it, right? I mean, that bothers me as a scientist. But apatheist, I just don't have the slightest interest in talking about whether God exists or not. It just has no meaning in my life. Anyway, just a way to agree with Debbie and to kind of, add to the discussion. So thank you so much.
Very, 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 very interesting, Frank. That's very, apathist. That's very good. Yeah, it's good. Thank you very much. Terrific. Boris.
Well, it's like this. You see, we talk about knowledge, and knowledge means knowing. We know something. Like, for instance, I know what's right and wrong. I know it. You don't have to teach me. I know in my gut. I know what is right and wrong. And in addition to that, I know a number of psychotics, people who have been diagnosed with psychotic mental disease, who know as definitely and as clearly as I know what's right and wrong. They know that they are the Messiah, or that they are being followed by somebody, or they have definite knowledge. They feel it. They have no doubt in their minds that what they know is true. And then I'm also aware that there are an awful lot of people who, although undiagnosed as psychotics, are somewhere along that sort of spectrum. I seem to find myself in conversation with lots of them every day, where they know things which I know are not true, and I know they're nonsense. And why do they keep on saying all these things that they know so when I know the opposite? Maybe what we should be talking about is doubt. Perhaps doubt is much more important than knowledge and discovery. Doubt. When we discover something, we should doubt that we've actually discovered it. When we know something, we should doubt that we actually know it. That I see in myself my own doubt as being the thing that helps me most in dealing with my life and with people around me. And when I'm in the company of those, occasionally in the company of those who are have no doubt, I'm talking about the psychotics, I feel very uncomfortable. Scientific proof, you could say, is a way of removing the doubt. But then, as Debbie pointed out, Popper said that what scientists are doing, or should be doing, is trying to disprove everything that they've just postulated. In other words, the doubt in science is built in. And doubt should be built in everything that we do. And maybe that the doubt is what distinguishes us from other, well, I don't know, I wouldn't say animals, I don't know if they think, but certainly from AI. When would an AI ever give an answer I don't think what I've told you is true.
Very good point, Morris. It's a very good topic for a Zoom meeting. Doubt. Very good. No, that's very good. Thank you.
But I doubt that you'll do that.
Thank you. Don't doubt anything. Okay. Thank you, Morris. Harry.
Okay, I'll keep this quick. Regarding Popper, he was maybe partially right that we can't prove anything, but we can't ever really know that we've disproven anything either, right? We can seemingly do it, but you can't necessarily know it. You can't prove that you've disproved something because you can't prove something. So there's an inherent issue there. Regarding, was it apitheism? I like the term. But what if God is the foundation of all existence? That would concern us necessarily, wouldn't it?
Did you see Frank's gesture? Exactly. He just showed the apathism. No, fair enough. Thank you very much, everybody. It's extremely interesting. As I mentioned at the beginning, those who weren't here didn't hear it. We're going for a short break for summer, 2 months, back in September, etc., etc. I hope you survive the 2 months without sort of getting together. And thank you very much, everybody. It was extremely interesting, and I look forward to seeing you when I see you. All the best to all of you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.